So I saw Longlegs on Thursday night, and I have a lot of thoughts about it. But before I get into that, I kind of wanted to talk about some of the hype built around this film and some of the things leading up to it that have both been great and sort of bad for the movie. So I've had my eyes on this movie for quite a while. It started, I think, around the beginning of this year with this trailer.
911, what's your emergency?
It's my daughter. I gotta be quiet.
Sir, can you stay on the line with me?
But it's not my daughter.
And for a while, a lot of the marketing was kind of like this, just creepy little snippets that were kind of building up some mystique, setting the tone a bit. And I actually think the marketing for this movie was great. We had some creepy clips like this. We had some pretty good trailers at first that I do think started to reveal a bit too much as we got closer to the movie. And then we had this birthdaymurders.net ARG. And this is actually really cool. It mostly just goes into some of the details of the murders that were committed by the serial killer known as Longlegs. I believe actually the email that was linked to this website at one point was valid and giving responses to people that were asking questions about it. I don't know if it still actually works. But the ARG is actually ongoing. There's going to be an update on Monday, so that's pretty exciting, and I look forward to seeing if this goes any further now that the movie's actually out. But yeah, I thought the marketing for this movie was actually great. It really set the tone. It didn't give away too much, even though I think some of the trailers kind of towed the line a bit. But the ARG, the really minimal early trailers, I thought it was all really well done. And that kind of leads me into my next point. There were a lot of early screeners for this movie, and the reactions on Twitter were actually pretty insane. Talking about how this is going to be the scariest movie of the decade, how people were crying in the middle of the movie, how people were sick to their stomachs, and people were walking out throwing up and shitting their pants. They seem to be just blatant overreactions, trying to hype things up. And I feel like I kind of had that feeling leading up to the movie that some of these reactions to the early screeners were just a little too crazy to be realistic. So, as a result, you're going to see a lot of people on Twitter shitting on this movie. It's already kind of started. People calling it boring, people saying it wasn't scary at all, which is just false. So it's kind of unfortunate. And I think something similar happened with movies like The Blair Witch Project when they came out. So immediate reactions to this movie are going to be kind of mixed. I think the people that like it are going to love it and adore it. And the people who don't are going to shit on it on Twitter because they thought that this movie was going to make you throw up everywhere and cry and dumb shit like that. But now that that's out of the way, I really loved Longlegs. I think Longlegs is going to end up being, one of those guys, one of the big boys in its genre. That genre being horror, but kind of thriller, investigation type story. Your Sevens, your Silence of the Lambs, your Zodiacs. But this one I think leans into horror more than any of them. And maybe that's part of the reason why I like it so much. The opening was tense and had me smiling from ear to ear, and from then on, it felt like Oz Perkins just had a little knob that he could turn to ramp up the tension pretty much at will throughout the movie. And there was a pretty consistent sense of dread throughout. And most of the time, that dread was never really relieved with, cheap scares or anything like that. There were occasional scares, but a lot of it was just tense. I thought all of the performances were great. Micah Monroe's character I actually found really interesting. She's very deadpan in the movie, and I've heard some other people describing her as seeming like she's on the spectrum. And she was just kind of awkward and stiff. but I think it was played really well, especially with the other characters in the film. It actually brought moments of levity when she was being awkward in certain situations. Nicolas Cage was crazy, as you'd expect from Nicolas Cage. And I think for some people, that's going to take folks out of it, knowing it's Nicolas Cage. But for me, it worked. I thought he was wacky and kooky like he is in a lot of other movies. And I think it was a great performance. He was genuinely unsettling. Thought the supporting cast was great too. Really, no poor performances in this movie whatsoever. And there was never any wasted time. The script was airtight. It felt like this thing was moving at a great pace. Every scene, pretty much every shot had some purpose, whether it be to build tension, to get deeper into the characters, or move the story forward. It was never meandering. And like I kind of mentioned before, the first hour of this movie actually had a pretty good amount of levity to it and some pretty funny jokes and just moments that really broke the tension just for a minute before Oz quickly ramped it back up. So yeah, performances and the script were great. The story actually leaned into certain aspects that I wasn't expecting them to go as deep into, but I liked it a lot. It made this movie stand out from some of the others in its genre. And as much as I loved just the story itself and the performances, one of the things that really struck me about this movie was the style. This thing was directed so well. There's so many flat shots where, you know, something is obviously in the foreground in focus, but your eyes are constantly darting around the screen because maybe there's a doorway in the background that seems so prime for some creepo to walk by it, or something in the background you're looking for, some shape, some sinister figure, something. There are so many shots in this movie that just kind of beg you to search them and try to find something hiding in the background. And I just found that to really help with the tension in this movie. And also, the movie takes place in the 90s, and just something about the style of it, maybe it was just the really nicely done set designs, but something about it just felt like a movie shot in the 90s, and I really enjoyed that. And I would like to also take a moment to appreciate this kind of shot in movies. I don't know what it is about this shot, but I love it. And it happens multiple times in this movie. So yeah, lots of great, wide, lingering shots. Really good camera work in moving shots. I was just super impressed with the style and cinematography, and the sound design as well was really good. Sound cues kind of matter in this movie, so they did a great job with that as well. And like I said before, the early screeners kind of blew the horror out of proportion, but this is a legitimate horror movie. There's a lot of creepiness, there's a lot of tension, there's some scares, and I think horror fans will be pleased with it, especially if you don't expect to be throwing up in your bucket of popcorn throughout the movie. I know it sounds like I'm kind of glazing this movie a bit hard, and that's because I am. I just really enjoyed it, and it's very much up my alley. Last year, I played one of my favorite games of all time, Alan Wake 2, and this movie is extremely Alan Wake 2 pilled. Obviously, it was created before slash during Alan Wake 2 released, so I'm not saying that it's derivative of Alan Wake 2 or anything like that by any means. Just a lot of the aura of this movie shares a lot of what Alan Wake 2 was giving, particularly a lot of the Saga Anderson focused chapters of Alan Wake 2. I think Sam Lake is really going to like this movie. And I've been looking for experiences to scratch that itch since I've played Alan Wake 2, while I wait for Remedy to release their next masterpiece. And this movie scratched that itch for me. And yeah, I really enjoyed the movie. Highlights for me were probably Micah Monroe's performance and the cinematography and style. Honestly, for most movies, I shout from the rooftops that you should see movies in a theater. But for this movie, I actually think it's more effective if you watch it at home. But if you're interested, supporting it in the theater is probably the best way to support the filmmakers. So definitely do that, and then catch it on streaming when it eventually comes to whatever service it ends up on. But yeah, it's lean. It feels old school in the way that it's made and just straight to the point. and I look forward to rewatching this. I think this movie will benefit from rewatching it and catching things you missed before. I want to say it's a classic, but um, only time will tell. But I personally like this just as much or more than something like Silence of the Lambs. So looking forward to seeing this again. Probably wait until it comes out on Blu-ray or something so I can watch it at home with all the lights off. Um, so yeah, Longlegs, great movie. I don't know how to end these things, so bye.